Welcome back to Two Dudes Talking Motorcycles. I am Gleb, and you can follow me on the Instagram at GlebLapham.
And I am Mitch. You can find me on Instagram at Meets to the Beach.
And you can find the podcast on Instagram at tdtmotorcycles. And you can email us for your any questions, comments, concerns, or any feedback that you have at tdtmotorcycles@gmail.com. And this is episode 26, 25.
25.
Yeah. 25 episodes. And in this episode, our main topic is going to be, we're going to be comparing the big three European adventure bikes. There are technically four because KTM.
Yeah, but we
didn't get a chance to ride the KTM.
Yeah.
But we did get a chance to ride the brand new R1300 GS over the weekend. And while we were at the dealership, we also asked them if we could take out the Ducati Multistrada V4S and the Tiger 1200 GT for a spin. So we have a very fresh comparison between the three big adventure bikes from these manufacturers. And so we thought it'd be a pretty fun topic to talk about because they're three very comparable bikes, but they each have their own like distinct advantages.
They really do. And all that was possible again because of Eurosports Utah.
Yeah.
They've been awesome for letting us test these bikes out. If you're looking to buy one, they will.
Yeah, if you're here in the Salt Lake area. Yeah. It's kind of cool that they're fans of the pod.
Yeah. So,
it's pretty fun.
Yeah, but I mean, all those guys there will help you out. They're super chill. So, yeah.
But before we jump into our main topic, we just wanted to do a little quick product review because I think we mentioned in the last episode that we bought the Cardo Packdock Edge. So we both got some new comms, and we got to try them out over the weekend. And I gotta say, these were phenomenal. If you're watching this on YouTube, we have a live
hit the mic with the clicks, but
it's a very small little unit. Has pretty decent battery life. Magnetically attaches to the side of the helmet.
You'll know when it connects. There you go.
Into its little cradle, and the mesh system on these works phenomenally.
It's awesome.
Yeah, because I had the Cardo Packdock Bold beforehand. You had the Senna on your helmet, and we always had to rely on Bluetooth to connect the two, which is always kind of a finicky experience.
Yeah.
And once we connected it once, we were too scared to ever touch it at all, because I remember it happened once. It like disconnected, and it took us like 20 minutes to figure out how to connect them back.
Yeah.
Back together.
Yeah, and like and so far my comparison, to be fair, because I did have a Senna, but it was the model that was for my GT Air that's behind Gleb there. So it's the one that's designed to go inside the helmet. It's not like their other ones. But yeah, I just really wasn't all that pleased with.
Yeah, I remember you had a few issues with it, like just crashing.
Yeah, it would freeze.
It would just freeze up in the middle of the rides, and you have to like put like a clothing pin in the back of the helmet to reset it. And we were like, wow, that's not a tool I thought to bring with me on a motorcycle ride.
Yeah, and Gleb and a waitress in Moab got to roast me for hitting the wrong button.
Yep.
So, yeah, but
so that was. And I remember it happened like when we were riding up in the mountains on one time, and you had to like pester the cars that were parked near the parking area.
Luckily, they had a paper clip.
You have a paper clip I can use. It was just so. But yeah, with these, like, I was amazed at how simple they were to connect.
Super simple.
And also, like, when we like rode again after connecting them the first time, we turned them on and boom, they were connected. It was amazing.
Yeah, like actually getting to use like the app with other Cardo users.
Yeah, makes it super, super simple.
Yeah.
And our friend Emerson also got one, and he's got the same unit, and our friend Dave. So we all kind of went on a deal. They went on a deal. We went on a deal together, and it was funny because we were riding. When we were testing out these bikes, we both drove there because it was a little too chilly for me at least, to ride on the freeway down to the dealership.
Yeah.
But we just got back from riding the Multistrada and the Tiger, and all of a sudden I hear just like a voice coming in through the intercoms. I was like, holy shit, that's Emerson. He's like, where are you guys at? We're like, oh, we're at the dealership. He's like, oh, cool, I'm nearby.
Yeah, for me it was like, wait, that's not Gleb's voice.
Yeah. So it just automatically connected. We didn't have to fiddle with any buttons. We didn't have to press anything. Our friend just connected to the system. And what was cool, in the app, so when you create like a group, when your friends connect to it, it actually creates separate groups for each, like if you're riding friends. So if it's just like me and you riding, we can just connect that group and it won't let anybody else into it. But if it's like our 3 or 4 person group or however many we have, if that person goes out of range and then comes back into range, you don't have to fiddle with it to reconnect. It just automatically snaps back into it, which is just makes it super easy. And you don't have to worry about it.
I'm very happy with it for a new system compared to what I've used before. And to be clear, this is not a paid advertisement. This is just what we're experiencing with these. So
it's been really good. I've never used a Senna. I know a lot of people use them and do like them. Maybe if you use a Senna with their other like mesh compatible like Senna models, maybe they behave in a similar way.
Yeah.
But I had such a good experience with Cardo that I kept trying to convince everyone else to get it.
Yeah. So we finally did.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, none of that was paid promotions.
No,
we
it
don't
was just
have
something
those
we
yet.
bought because they were on sale, and they work really well, and the sounds good. The noise canceling on those mics is excellent.
Yeah.
Because I called one of my friends while I was on my bike, and she was surprised that I was on my bike because she could hear me very, very well.
Yeah, it's like when I tested it out, I called my girlfriend from my bike on it, and she was like, "You're not on your bike." You saw me leave. Yes, I am.
Yep. And so that's our glowing review of the Cardo Pack Talk Edge that we both picked up, and that's our news for the day.
That's our news. Just kind of our little here's our input on something cool.
And we love talking. We actually have both got new gear too.
Yeah.
So in a couple of episodes down the road, we're going to probably talk about just kind of our revamped adventure setup now that we got.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you already just saw my new helmet. So
I think that would be a good episode topic.
I think
in the future. And if you are shopping for new gear and want to pick some up, feel free to use our RevZilla affiliate link down in the description below. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does give us a little bit of a kickback. And it does work with like additional discounts and everything like that. So if you're a military or first responder discount, or if there's a sale going on, as long as you're using our link, we still get like a percentage of that money going towards the podcast, and it helps support the podcast. If you're not buying anything, feel free to also help out the podcast by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/tdtmotorcycles. All that money is going towards just equipment and supporting just the hosting providers and everything like that. So help us out a lot. So feel free to do that if you want.
And thank you for all the comments on stuff from the last episode as well.
We love seeing the comments. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the history of MotoGP. That was a really fun one.
Actually,
fun one to make.
Yeah, really quick because we didn't plan this, but the MotoGP was this last weekend, and this is my first time actually sitting down to watch it. Awesome.
Really?
It was so much fun. MotoGP, their next one is in Portugal, start next weekend. So if you're following that,
sweet. If you're in Portugal and you listen to this, let us know if you went.
Send us pictures if you're there.
Send us pictures. Yeah, that would actually be really cool. Should we jump into our main topic?
I think we should. Yep.
Cool. Take it away.
All right. So as we mentioned, we are going to be talking about three of the 4 European big boy ADV bikes. And they are big. Let's see. Should we start with the newest one?
Let's start with the BMW because I think this kind of like the most prominent one right now because this is the brand new
and
bike.
we've teased it enough. We said, we're gonna ride one. We're gonna ride one. So
and we finally did. And overall, it was a fantastic bike.
Yeah.
And just like when we tried the previous GS a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And this bike feels way more refined.
It's nuts, man. Like there was really the GS 1250 was already we rode it, right? We liked it. It was already a very comfortable, very nimble bike for how big it looks. It's still just a motorcycle. Like it's the width of the handlebars. It's just heavy. It's just
a
big.
very heavy bike, and you definitely feel that weight when it's standing still. Once it's moving, though, that weight kind of disappears, and it's thanks to that boxer engine.
Yeah, and that's basically what I was just getting to. Was like with how big and intimidating it is when you approach it, right? Like it's a big bike. The new GS 1300 is very like you said, refined. It's nuts when you see them side by side in the dealership.
It just looks so much more slimmer and narrower than the previous model. But despite it being smaller, lighter, and narrower, it still has that same comfort that you expect from the GS.
Yeah. And that was my first note, because after we rode them, I was just like, this thing is like very comfortable.
Oh, 100%.
It's very, I guess sleek would be a very good.
Yeah.
Like they trim down a lot of like the
fat.
the boxiness of it, you know?
And for those of you that are unaware, we do have, if you want to go more into depth. Wow, I could not talk today. It's been a long week. If you want to go into more, hear some more in-depth like specs and stuff on the bike, we do have an episode that we talked about it a few months ago when it was announced and released. So we kind of do a deep dive into the specs, into like what changes were made between the old versus the new model. So we have a full episode on that if you want to go back and listen to it.
We can put a link to that episode in the description too.
Definitely. And we kind of just go more in depth about the changes versus the old model. This is more of just the riding experience itself, even though we didn't get to ride it for very long. Yeah. But it was still enough time to kind of get a decent feel for it, at least on city roads and kind of a little bit of a twisty here and there.
Yeah. So I guess like just some of the things that like I noticed right off the bat, getting onto the bike and firing it up and going. Again, it still has that low center of gravity. Yeah. That the other GSs have, but like just the way how it's all built around on a whole new chassis, new engine, it really does feel planted to the ground. That's one thing I noticed.
Way more nimble compared to the old bike. And one of the first things I noticed is kind of the same as how easy it is just to get the bike off the kickstand and get it going. Yep. Like it didn't feel like it was fighting me. It didn't feel top heavy. And I feel like that boxer engine just helps so much with having that low center of gravity that it makes maneuvering such a big and heavy bike way easier than it should be. Yeah.
And I, again, back to like the whole headlight issue that this bike kind of stirred up with the new styling. Yeah. I had some issues on it before, and like I still really love the old headlight, but I really think this new headlight it just kind of like makes it stand out from the competition more with its already sleek and brought in design. Yeah. I think the whole package works, and as far as aesthetics go,
I think it does work. I think it looks much better in person than it did on like the press images or just seeing pictures of it online. Yeah. However, I still think I will miss that asymmetrical, blocky headlight that the old GS had, because I think it was just such an iconic design. It was. And I'm not saying this will be iconic. I'm pretty sure like once it's around for a while, people are just going to get used to it. Yeah. And it's going to be associated with the GS, but I kind of do miss that old like Mad Max almost looking design of the old of the outgoing model. But in every way other than the design of the bike, the aesthetic of the bike, it feels completely better. Yeah. than the previous bike. Yeah. And
again, that's not to say the older models left you with anything wanting. It's just like it was very like
it was getting a little like up there in age.
It had sort of that, way, but it was just like it was very it drew a hard line on whether you're gonna like it or not. Yeah. And I think this one kind of like stands out, but kind of is more approachable.
I think, I agree. It is more approachable. It feels a little more peppy, a little bit more lively, because it does have more power compared to the outgoing model.
And speaking of the engine, that new engine, that 1300, like it's got a good amount of grunt to it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a really good sounding engine, especially because the model we drove had the double-ended exhaust, double-tipped exhaust. So it's not the stock exhaust. Yeah. There's an Akrapovic, a little bit of a gruntier note than
it was nice.
What the stock exhaust might be, and for reference, we did get to try the demo model that was available was the triple black edition. So it was kind of a pretty souped up model. It's got had a few optional electronics and features on there that the base model might not have.
Yeah. One thing that was pretty sweet on there too was the where did I have it on here? Oh, sorry about that, guys. the TFT sitting in the cockpit, you're on there. Super bright and crisp and like very smooth. Really good refresh rate.
Between the three bikes that we rode that day, the BMW by far had probably the best TFT. Yeah. I don't know what kind of refresh rate it has, but it feels like it's way above 60. Yeah. Like it's either 90 or 120, because like just seeing the RPMs go up, the speed move, and at the speed at which you navigate the screen just felt so responsive and so precise that it's like compared to the Ducati and especially the Triumph, which I felt probably has the worst, probably like the worst TFT. It's still fairly good.
It's not, again, like, it's not bad. None of these bikes are bad, right?
But like on the Triumph, the TFT just did not feel nearly as responsive or as crisp as BMW's.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I really like about BMW's TFT is it makes a really good use of the space, because it's the smallest of the TFTs between the three bikes.
Yeah.
But it makes a very good use of that space. It shows all the information you need right there and very clearly, and kind of leaves the rest of it out.
Yeah. Before I had some other specs and facts about it, but before I was gonna ask you like what you thought. Like, I found the engine to be very smooth. Like, I think overall, I would say like with this bike was the and we'll get to other bikes too, but I think the BMW was probably the most luxurious, like the smoothest riding.
It definitely felt like it, except for the quick shifter.
Yeah.
The quick shifter on this one, there's this, for some reason, and I've heard this from other reviews, like over previous BMW models, is at least for the GS, is that especially between first and second gear, that quick shifter just had this like massive like clunk to it. You can like feel it shifting, and you really got to like force it up there. So it was like, that's the only part where I thought it kind of was not quite as refined as it could be, especially compared to the other two bikes.
Yeah. I found like the other, like, just in response to that, because like I agree, I felt that too, but there was like, when you're in the higher gears, there's a sweet spot with it. Like if you're just holding the throttle, you're not trying to speed up or slow down. There's a sweet spot in there where it will shift really well.
Yeah, I did notice that too.
Yeah.
But that first to second to third gear, you really like feel like that. It's like a jolt throughout the bike. You feel like really shifting. Only on the upshift, so downshifting, you don't even feel it.
Yeah.
Downshift is like just super, super smooth. And yeah, like the TFT. And my other favorite thing about the bike was, we mentioned the comfort. That was probably the immediate thing that I noticed first, is how comfortable it was to sit on that bike. Very upright, very commanding seating position.
Yeah.
Legs are pretty much like 90 degrees down, maybe a little bit
at the same time,
in.
right? It was like with how comfortable that seat was and everything. It was just kind of like, oh, sit down, take your shoes off.
Yeah,
it was
it's like a little, almost like a little lazy boy on top of the bike.
So,
and this model specifically came with like all the comfort features. It had heated grips, it had a heated seat, it had an electronically adjustable windscreen, it had adaptive cruise control. So it's a pretty well equipped model, and all those little things, like, I don't know, some people aren't like too sold on like creature comfort. It's like, oh, it's a motorcycle, you're exposed to the elements and stuff. But when you're doing a long ride, all those little comforts really do add up to make it kind of a lot more comfortable.
And I don't think we mentioned this at the beginning. Like, this isn't like a comparison of which one is better. Like, again, none of these bikes are bad. It's just like, what are you going to be looking for? I think is like, I'm just trying my best to be objective, but with my experience.
Yeah.
Again, I would just say, like, riding it, it's a very capable, fun bike. And it's, out of all of them, I'd say it's the most like luxurious and techy.
I would say, yeah, it definitely came like pretty much fully loaded.
Yeah.
At least for the trim that we we rode. And kind of, what was your like favorite part about riding it?
Well, for one, it was just like awesome to be on like a whole new bike. It's not like this was like a
And for those that you don't know, like, this bike was built from the ground up. So,
chassis, engine,
pretty much like no part from the old bike made it to this new one, which is why it probably feels like so refined. And it feels new. It's fully liquid cooled now instead of being air/liquid cooled. You still got those boxers, like the boxer twin like cylinder heads like sticking out on each side. But overall, like, it felt really good.
No, I think like, I think that was probably the best thing that I found about it. It was like, this is a whole new bike. It's very different. And again, I don't get to ride those boxer engines very much, and so like, when you do, it's just like, cool they're fun. This is a fun engine. It's very smooth, but yet some grunty.
It's very, very smooth, and I noticed just how well it handles at low speeds.
Yeah,
that engine, it sounds like a tractor a little bit to me. It just kind of have this like,
it kind of just rattles.
Like a little rattly like sound to it, but it's got a lot of low end torque. It just kind of takes off and wants to keep going. even though it's not the most powerful of the bunch.
Well, it's like with my Scrambler, I'm all
yeah.
about that low end.
Yep.
So.
But overall, it just felt like a good bike to be on. I also like the way BMW kind of lays out their controls, but my only like gripe with some of their controls is I wish they had more controls, like more buttons for more things. Because I remember like we were trying to turn on like the heated grips in the seat. You gotta like hit one button, like scroll through a menu, hit OK, and then you can change it. I wish there was like a couple more dedicated buttons for things that.
See, I don't think we really even talked about that off like on the day of writing or before or while we were prepping for our episode, but I put that exact same thing. It just kind of, I will say, like, it seemed like a lot of those really awesome features are just kind of like bottlenecked to the screen.
Yeah. And I feel like we see that not just with BMW, with a lot of bikes that have the TFT. They just kind of
a lot of cars even.
Yeah. Or cars, especially. Cars don't even get me started on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a lot of like, of those settings are starting to be buried in the menus and stuff. Luckily, BMW is pretty easy to navigate once you get the hang of it.
Yeah.
But it's still like 2 extra steps to turn on like heated grips or to adjust your windscreen. Maybe the windscreen I understand because that's something you kind of just leave most of the time. Like I don't adjust my windscreen very often.
Yeah.
But I do adjust my heated grips very often. I'm very glad that my bike has a dedicated button for the heated grips. It's something the BMW did not have.
Yeah, and that was what I put. It's just like this should just be a button.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it is cool that you can. It's like a fully adjustable, like electronic windscreen, right?
Yep.
But I'm also in the mindset, and this is counterintuitive to me saying I'm trying to be objective, but like with me, I'm in the mindset with cars or anything. It's like if it doesn't have to be electronic, there's no reason to.
Yeah,
it's just another thing to break.
Yeah, and
it's why I won't buy a car with a moonroof or sunroof.
Yeah, it's just like that. I feel the same way. Like if that windscreen breaks and stuff like that, or that mechanism like gets dust in it, especially if you're taking like off road and it kind of gets jammed, then that's like another part you have to fix. When, for example, like on my bike, I just have to push it forward and it's all mechanical. Just do it with one hand real quick.
Yeah.
So it is a nice convenience feature, but at the same time, it's also another thing that can potentially break in the future.
Yeah.
The other really cool thing about this bike, and the model that we test rode didn't have this, but it actually has electronic panniers. Panniers that you can get for it. So they have like a method to connect the panniers, if you get the official BMW ones, electronically to the bike. And you can actually use your motorcycle key to lock and unlock them like you would do with a car door, which I'm like, okay, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But imagine if you drop the bike and one of those panniers like breaks and you have to go buy another one. I can't imagine how much it would cost to either fix or just buy one.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine it's a small amount of money.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like little locks. That's kind of nice too. It's like a trunk basically.
Well, and that's why like in my vocabulary, like I think luxurious just kind of hits it all. Like it's very modern, advanced.
I agree.
You know, it's like if you're looking for something that's very comfortable and it's just like I'm trying to think of the other word for it, but just if you're looking for modern conveniences, like this bike is loaded to the teeth with them. So it was a lot of fun to ride. I would say this is a very nice bike.
I really enjoyed riding it. It was a blast.
Yeah.
It was a blast, but not as big of a blast as the Ducati Multistrada.
Yeah.
Because did you want to just go in order of the 3 that we have? Because I have the Ducati second and then the Tiger last.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like we'll just kind of, for everybody listening, we'll just like give off like a side-by-side comparison for like service intervals and starting prices and stuff at the end. So,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So the second bike that we rode was, well, you rode the Multistrada second, I rode the Tiger second, then we swapped. But we'll go over the Multistrada second.
Well, and this was your second time riding the Multistrada.
It was my second time. Yeah, I got to ride it before, and between the 3 bikes that we rode, that one's still my favorite just because of how awesome that engine feels and how responsive the whole bike feels. It just makes me like giddy like riding that thing, because compared to between the 3 bikes, the Ducati was the most powerful one. It's coming in a whopping 170 horsepower, 95 pound-feet of torque. Not the torquiest, but definitely the most horsepower, and you can definitely feel it. And that V4 is just such a smooth engine.
It's nice. Like, yeah. And like what I like, it's with that V4, like it hits that like that sweet spot of like it's comfortably smooth, but it has like enough pep to it that you feel aggressive.
Yeah, and it feels very, very aggressive. It just roars to life. It's a very high revving engine too, and it just roars to life. In fact, like on the way back, we were like did a little like acceleration test. I was like, oh, that front end's feeling a little light up front. It's a very quick bike.
Yeah, it was really cool. And one thing I you know, we've tried a lot of bikes that have like road mode, rain, street, sport.
Yeah.
So far, switching from road mode to sport mode, for me, is the Multistrada was the most noticeable difference.
I agree. I agree. And I also really like that Ducati does this. And I noticed this on the Desert X as well. And the Multistrada had it, is it lets you really fine tune those modes to your preference. So it has a lot of like customizability in them, which I always appreciate. And it's helpful because it has electronic suspension. So you don't have to like manually adjust the suspension for rebound or dampening or preload or anything like that. The bike does it for you. But that goes the same for all three of the models that we tried on. In fact, going back to the BMW real quick, I remember when I put it from normal mode to like their sport dynamic mode, which is like their sport mode, I could feel the suspension like kind of lowered and stiffened up a little bit to kind of, you know, give it like a bit of a sportier feel.
Yeah. No, so it was very cool. I unfortunately forgot to switch to sport mode on the BMW.
But you did have it on the Ducati, right?
I did. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm not taking that Ducati back without trying sport mode.
The sport mode on the Ducati was something else.
Because the Desert X was a blast too.
Yeah,
and the
I
Diavel.
agree. Yeah.
So,
but that Multistrada, for just like being a big adventure bike, both times that I rode it, amazes me at how light and responsive it feels. It does feel like more top heavy than the BMW, just because it doesn't have that boxer engine. It has a higher center of gravity, but at higher speeds, it just feels like a sport, like you're riding a very tall sports bike.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. You know, it uses the same engine as the Diavel too, so it's very like it's beefy.
They're kind of like
beefy.
They're like grand touring long range engine, which is very nice, and it is a V4, and it's just so smooth. Like there's no vibration going throughout the bike unless you're like really, really hard on the throttle.
And of these bikes, this is the most gas guzzling one. Fuel efficiency, you're trading a fuel efficiency for this engine. It's a lot of fun.
It's worth
it. And
it.
it's a massive gas tank anyway.
Yeah, it's got 5.8 gallons and stuff. This is the heaviest of the bunch too. Well, sort of. It depends how Triumph measures their weight and stuff too.
Yeah, so
because
if you're good at numbers, you can figure it out. So.
Yeah, but on paper, this is the heavier bike if you include the fuel. Without the fuel, it is the lightest, but then again, you're gonna have fuel in it. So
and then for my first time riding the Multistrada V4S was that like. You know, it was very sporty, aggressive, and it just felt like an adventure-y bike, you know?
Yeah.
But it has a ton of tech packed into it. You know, it's a very modern bike. But then it also gets to, I would say it just kind of like takes in some of that intimidation factor that like kind of on the same level that the GSA 1250 gave you. You know, it just looks mean and big.
It looks big.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. It's a very responsive bike.
Yeah. And once you feel that power, you're like, oh, this is something else. This is like a whole other level of machine compared to the other two bikes. If your goal is to go fast.
Yeah.
And I would feel
fast and in comfort.
Yeah. I would put this bike like definitely more road oriented.
Yeah.
Versus like a mix between the two. Like
well, I think all of these three of these bikes.
All three of these, we're kind of more road oriented, but I think the BMW is probably like the closest to like on and off road bike because they don't really like BMW. At least on the current R1300 GS, they don't really have like an off road specific model.
Not yet.
They have a trim. They have a package that you can get. You get the trophy package on it, which adds spoked wheels and more protection and things like that. And you can get the optional like Enduro Pro mode, which basically removes all the assists. But the Ducati and the Triumph, they have like a more off-road oriented model, especially the Triumph. But Ducati has the Multistrada V4 Rally now, which recently came out, and that comes with a larger front wheel. It comes with spoked wheels, more off-road oriented, and then the Tiger has the Tiger Rally, which is the only bike you can get that has a 21-inch wheel and the shaft drive.
Yeah.
The Tiger
Yeah.
1200. So the Tiger 1200 Rally is like probably the most off-road oriented.
The Rally Explorer.
Or the Rally Explorer if you want the giant gas tank, but
Yeah.
that's the most like road or off-road oriented out of the three.
And that's if you're
that's not
brave
the one.
enough to chuck these monsters
Yeah,
down a
but
trail.
that's not the one we rode. We rode the Tiger 1200 GT, which is a more road bias model, which made actually a better comparison between these three bikes because they were all more road bias models.
No, for sure. And just really quickly back to the GS 1300, because it's like a lot with the other BMW bikes of the past, like the GS 1200 came out, then all the different variants followed. So I think so. And this new 1300 engine that's going to be the standard for their bigger engines now. Like the 1250s aren't, they're no longer in production.
Yeah.
Like, what's out is out. So I'm sure we'll see something down the road.
We'll probably see like the R1300, like I think it's the FS or something. It's the basically the sports touring variant of the GS. So it's a whole other bike, but it uses the same engine, just tuned differently. It's probably gonna get that as well.
So that's two really fun bikes back to back that I can't afford right now, but it was pretty awesome.
What are some of the things you didn't like on the Ducati?
I guess just like overall, not necessarily my experience driving it, but like you're into a certain price point and then you're kind of being put back to a chain. Again, weight saving. So that it could have been heavier.
Could have been heavier.
It's a little easier to fix on the fly, having a chain from there. The screen was pretty good on the Ducati. I think it could be a little brighter.
Could be a little brighter. Yeah, It still doesn't feel as good as the BMW. It's just BMW says like that secret crispy screen formula, and I don't know what they do. But it's so good.
There's really not like a whole lot that stood out that I didn't like about it, because that bike was awesome. Oh no, I take that back. The exhaust, how it kind of wraps around, like the back of my heel, I'm sitting on the pegs like I normally would on all the other bikes I rode, including my bike. My regular foot position on being on the peg, the back of my shoe was like up against the pipe that wraps up around in the back.
Oh, really?
So I didn't like that. I was just like, that needs to be kind of moved
a little bit. I didn't
like the foot peg is in a good position. The foot peg was in a great position. It's just like where that pipe was. I was just it needs to go that way. So
makes sense.
Again, that's just nitpicking, though.
That's very nitpicky. I think I don't know. There's not a lot of negative things to say about the bike, other than they've done the cost of it. Because it's the most expensive of the bunch. But it's just overall, it's just such a good feeling bike. It just makes me like giddy getting back on it, and just because of how fast it is. You don't expect something that big to move that quick, but it does.
It's a big bike. By the way, guys, it's a big bike, but like but you like open up that throttle, and I compare it to like when we rode the Street Triple RS, and just like, how is this monster feeling this comparable in like acceleration?
Exactly. And that's the thing that the other two bikes that we tried do not have.
You're on a big bike.
You're on a big adventure bike, and it's not going to be that quick. It's not going to be as quick as like a sports bike. But the Multistrada feels closer to a sports bike than it does to an adventure bike, and that's what makes it like as special as it is. It does also have like the full electronics package. It has adaptive cruise control, just like the BMW. It's got heated grips. It's got a heated seat.
Either it's an option or it comes on there.
It's got to definitely, if it doesn't come already on there, it's definitely an option. It has...
the one we rode, I think it is. I think it comes with it because the one we rode, the demo we rode had it on there anyway.
Okay,
so.
Perfect. And fully electronic suspension, electronic preload adjustment, like all this stuff, the same as the GS. Like it has all the bells and whistles and stuff. It's just how it approaches the performance of the bike is different because of that engine, because it's a damn good engine.
It's like Ducati was like in their boardroom and they were like, how do we get sport bike riders onto bigger bikes?
Let's put that sporty engine on a big adventure bike, which is just crazy.
Yeah. But for me with that one, like my biggest conclusion, and it was the most powerful, aggressive, and playful of all the ones we rode. And you mentioned, like, one of the things you didn't like is the price point. And we'll do a side by side at the end, but like this is the most expensive bike by quite a bit on the like out of these all these ones here. But I think like one thing to consider before going, like, if you're just going to write it off because it's expensive, the valve check interval is substantially bigger.
Than either of the other bikes, which can save you a lot of money in the long run. But it's also a Ducati, so who knows how much getting those checked is going to cost you. Yeah. But it's still nice not to have to worry about that for such a long time.
Yeah, it's you're getting a lot of miles in between those big expensive valve services. So it is more expensive, but it's going to be less time
spent in the shop. And for those of you that are wondering, it has 170 horsepower, 92 pound-feet of torque versus BMW's 145 horsepower, but 110 pound-feet of torque. So a little bit more torque in the BMW. And then we can move on to our last bike, the Triumph. And these aren't in order of favorite, like most favorite to least favorite. This is just the order that we wrote them in.
Yeah, again, like full transparency, like I like Triumph a lot.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And like this isn't a ranking of these bikes. This is just like things that we noticed and picked up on. Because I've said it 5 times. I'm going to say it one more time. None of these bikes were bad or left us wanting more. No. These are all powerful bikes.
And I think the one advantage BMW kind of has in this class, because they were almost like, the GS has been around for like 40 years. Like the adventure line of like their adventure bikes have been around for about like 40 years. So they had so much time to refine and kind of like, basically refine that class of motorcycle, and each iteration becomes better and better and better than the last. And this was like a fully, not just a small iteration, this is a full blown like ground up iteration. Of both the bike and the engine and stuff. But that Boxer twin, they've been making that for that engine, or like they've been making a Boxer twin engine for 100 years. So it's only been on the GS for like 40% of the timeline. But the engine itself, that's the engine BMW started with. So they're really good at making a Boxer twin. And that's why that bike probably feels like just so good. Is they just have the experience, they just have the pedigree.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like in the ADV segment, like BMW does have the pedigree. So it's like,
and if you look at like a lot of adventure bike riders like on YouTube, or if you've seen Long Way Round, the Long Way Down, they're riding the BMW GS. And you go through YouTube, there's a lot of people riding that bike, and there's a reason for it, and that's because it is a damn good bike. And this new one is even better than the previous model, at least for now. And just taking a short ride, like long-term reliability and support, that's to be determined because it hasn't been out long enough. But the outgoing model, the R1200 GS, people love that bike. It is BMW's best-selling bike, and it's probably the best-selling adventure bike in the world, which like speaks a lot of volume.
No, it's So again, we're not hating any of these bikes.
No, but we're recognizing that BMW does have a lot of knowledge and experience building these kinds of bikes. Then Ducati and Triumph, they have plenty of experience and knowledge building these kinds of bikes too. It's just BMW kind of is like
in this segment.
It's the one to be in the segment. It's the one that people always like think of automatically when it's an adventure, at least a heavyweight adventure bike.
Like a few years ago, like when I was looking at getting into ADV bikes, and I'm sure other people have heard this term too, but like people were always like referring to other bikes as like a potential GS killer. So like that kind of was like what this industry was. It's like, well, we want to be better. We're going to be better. We're better. Which is good. We need,
and we can't say if these two bikes killed the GS or not, because they're different enough that they're not really like, they're in the same category, but they each have a different feel to them. It's not like 100% transferable between the three different models we tried.
They offer something for different riders.
Yeah.
So that's,
anyways, the Triumph Tiger 1200 GT, I'm just going to shoot off the engine figure real quick, is a 1200cc engine, 147 horsepower, 95 pound-feet of torque. So just basically comparable to the BMW, minus the little bit less torque. But the Triumph Tiger, I remember I rode it once. We both rode it once before. And I remember, I don't know if it was that specific model. We weren't, super impressed with it. For some reason, I liked it much better this time around than the first time we rode it.
Well, I remember, because that was a while ago that we did that. And, when we talked about it, it was it's a nice bike. It's an improvement. There's a obligatory mic bump. But it was... something just kind of felt off when we first rode it. So I don't know what was up with that day, because I got on the GS and the Multistrada, and then I tried out the Tiger again. So I was just gonna be like, okay, let's try the Tiger and see how it goes. And I was like, oh no, my memory is way off.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. I was like, okay, this is way better than I remember it. And the first thing I noticed was the exhaust sounded very grunty on it. It had this very nice grunt, especially down on the low revs. And I was like,
to my subjective tastes, I think the exhaust on the Tiger sound is the best.
I also agree. It just sounded like it has the most grunty note to it. And I was like, wow, I don't remember it sounding like this. It sounds it doesn't sound quite as whiny as I was kind of expecting a triple to sound, because my bike sounds kind of whiny. And
let's go that triple whine, yeah.
But this one, it just had a nice grunty exhaust note to it, which I was like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'm baffled at what was going on the first day we rode it.
Yeah, I don't know either. Maybe it was us.
It might have been just a bad day.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed riding the Tiger this time around. It was a very, it was just like the other two bikes. It was a very comfortable and very, very good bike to sit on. Yeah, it had all the usual features: heated grips, heated seat. Did not have the adaptive cruise control.
Doesn't have that, no.
But it does have electronic suspension and different riding modes. But that's pretty much the standard for this segment of bike.
Yeah, and I think one thing with Triumph, and again, this could just be my own brand bias. It's when Triumph was going to make something like this, everything this bike does, other bikes do, but Triumph does it in its own way.
Yeah,
and it just feels good to me.
Yeah, I agree. Having the triple engine with the T-plane crank, it's oh, we want to give it a little more low end torque and low end grunt.
Yeah,
but we don't want to take away the triple engine, so we're gonna change up the way the firing order works to make that happen instead of putting a parallel twin in there and having it be like so many other bikes.
Yeah. It was, and we took both the Multistrada and the Tiger into a parking lot and did some slow speed stuff to feel what these big bikes feel like and going through. Honestly, they were both awesome.
They were both awesome, but I did feel the Tiger is probably the most top heavy between the three.
Yeah, maybe
it did feel a little bit more you gotta have to give it a little bit more effort to get it to turn.
So I looked for that a bit, and I had I'd say just trying out a bike with a different balance point and everything. I was it did take me some time to adjust to it, but once I was on it, I was like, these both are really nimble and
not
very
quite as
easy to
nimble as the
handle.
BMW at those lower speeds.
Yeah, it was
the BMW is a whole other level.
Once you figure out that counter lean point, you're just kind of okay, that
the
feels
BMW,
nice.
you're just oh, this thing will stay upright. I'm not too worried about this thing wanting to topple over.
Yeah.
But I did find the Tiger to be a little bit more of on the heavier side between the two. I think the Multistrada, the Ducati, was probably the most nimble feeling at speed and corners.
I wonder how
out of the three that we rode,
because the model we were riding for the Tiger, it had those panniers too. So I don't know how heavy those are or how much those offset.
I did forget about that. The model we rode did have the panniers on it, so I'm sure that added to the weight and probably changed the characteristics of the handling a little bit. compared to the other two. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to think about that.
And then even on the acceleration, you just get that thing going. It's a triple, so it's very smooth, but
it has a very smooth,
but it's responsive and still vibey and grunty, but not like, I don't know. It just kind of just brings you into everything.
It really does. I really like that. I really like the triple engine. I think Triumph always does such a great job of making their bikes just feel so balanced, like in the weight and stuff like that. The bigger bikes, I feel like you kind of feel the weight quite a bit more, which makes sense. Yeah. Like on my bike though, like I freaking love how well balanced it is.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about the Street Triple RS as well. On this bike, it is a bigger engine, so you feel the weight a little bit more, and it is a heavy adventure bike. Plus, it had those panniers on there.
Yeah.
But it was still like, I still really enjoyed riding it. My biggest gripe for it, though, was the TFT.
Yeah, that's what I put too.
I don't know if it's because it's the demo model, because I feel like, I remember you tried it in the store one time.
It looks
just
better.
Like a floor model.
Yeah, the floor model.
It was more responsive.
Yeah.
But just on the demo model, it was just kind of like slow and laggy compared to the Ducati, and especially compared to the BMW screen.
Yeah.
And I have this gripe with Triumph. They have this like big 7-inch TFT on there, but they utilize so little space of it that I'm just like, okay, why have this big of screen if you're only gonna like show this much information on it? Granted, like you can access the option.
Graphics though, right? Like everything shows up bigger on the screen, or is it just empty space?
A lot of it's just empty space.
Okay.
And like, granted, if you like start scrolling through the options, if you want to like change the suspension settings, change your riding mode and stuff like that, it does scooch the speedometer and the tachometer over to the side, and then pops up the options. But then when you don't have those options, there's so much empty space around it. I'm like, I feel like it could have just either shrunk the screen or just added a little bit more information around there.
So for you, like, you're not really happy with the user interface, like
I think between the
front end of the
I think between the three bikes, the Triumph UI is probably like my least favorite. BMW's is probably my top favorite, just because of how stupidly responsive it is. Like it's just like, it's like using my phone. Like it's just so quick and snappy, followed by Ducati's, which also quick and snappy, but still has you kind of like a little slow to navigate the menus.
It just kind of hits the standard. That's what I kind of felt. Is like, it's a good screen. It's good. Yeah. Like, it's good.
And Triumphs, I just felt like, I don't know, it just feels like it needs a lot more crap. It just needs a little bit more like oomph behind the screen. Like when I scroll down, and it could be the demo model. It could have been the demo model, but I just feel like,
well, because your 900 isn't like that.
No, my 900, but it also has a different interface, like their slightly older system that they kind of like moved away from, especially even with the new Tiger 900.
Oh, okay.
Uses kind of like their new layout, and their new layout uses even like just the part that it shows you uses even less screen space than the layout that I have on my bike. And I'm like, okay, why have this big of a screen if you're not going to utilize more of the space on it, or give it like a larger number and things like that? I don't know who is in charge of Triumph's UI design, but I'm sorry, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite interface. Neither, whether it's my bike with the older interface or the GT or the 1200 with the newer interface. I just feel like it could utilize the space that it has a lot better. Or
it's the demo. Right.
Or it's the demo.
So I don't know.
But
we don't know enough to say really, but
the demo I would say for the responsiveness, but the layout is still the same.
Oh yeah, no, I get
so I'm just saying like the overall layout of the UI could utilize the space that it has much better. Okay. Or this goes for all three manufacturers, like I always say, just add some fucking Apple CarPlay onto it. Let me connect my phone to it. And just have,
you think it would save them a lot of hassle? Just like, here's the Apple and Android interface, like just like connect your phone.
Like they could do something like, for the essential functions, like how fast you're going, what gear you're in, and how much fuel you have. Just have like a bar at the bottom, have your Apple CarPlay like right there on the top. Might be a little harder on BMW screen because it's smaller, but Ducati and especially Triumph could definitely pull something like that off because their screens are massive.
Yeah, I mean Honda figured out a way to do it.
If Honda can do it, BMW, Ducati, and Triumph can definitely do it.
Yeah.
Anyways, end rant. TFT, not my favorite.
Yeah. No,
the rest of the bike, pretty damn great.
Yeah. Like in making them like, oh, these are things I noticed about each bike when I got on it and rode it for the first time. You know, I made a list of that, and it's like, okay, out of that, like, here's some maybe cons. You know, the one things that I noticed that didn't quite meet, you know, what I was expecting, or however you want to word that.
Yeah.
But for my cons for the Tiger, like as the package as it is, it was like the only con I put down was that TFT.
Yeah.
Comparing them all side by side with the models that we rode, or with like the individual products that we rode, the TFT and the refresh rate, it was lacking compared to the others.
Yeah.
So
I agree on that.
But yeah,
between the three, which one was your favorite?
You know, my personal favorite, again, not saying which one's best or which one sucks, because none of these bikes suck.
No, they're all great.
You know, like for like what I would be looking to spend, like if money wasn't a factor, but I could only get one, it was honestly more closer of a competition for my own choice between the Tiger and the Multistrada. I feel like, especially with seating position, comfort, and like the wind bubble around you and maneuverability, the Tiger and the Multistrada were just really close together until you opened up the throttle.
Yeah.
And again, not that the Tiger left me like feeling like I was just chugging along at a slow speed. It's still a fast, powerful, heavy bike,
but
you know,
not as fast as
the Ducati
Multistrada.
is. Yeah, and I don't know I don't remember or know the side by sides of like what is faster or better as a drive shaft or a chain.
I think the drive shaft, if I remember correctly, has less loss of power between the engine and the wheel.
Yeah.
Also less maintenance, which is nice, but with that much horsepower, like it's not gonna make that much of a difference. Between that 25 like horsepower difference between the two bikes, it's crazy. Or 35.
Yeah. If there was a clone of me who had a lot more money than me, I would say that my clone would probably go with the Multistrada. Now, if it was realistically like me in my world at my price point, I would still have to really consider and crunch the numbers with that valve check interval.
Yeah.
And this is where we'll give you guys like the side by side for your service and pricing.
Yeah. So the pricing starts at I got these down.
Yeah. So starting with the Multistrada, we'll go up to down, top to down. Your MSRP for the Ducati Multistrada V4S from Ducati's website, starting at $27,196,
which is
compared
a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. You know, you're reaching up to $30,000, right? Where on the Tiger, your starting MSRP and this is for the GT 1200 GT Pro, your starting MSRP is $21,895. From there, so that is a substantial price point, especially when you get to the BMW. Your starting MSRP for the GS 1300 Triple Black, the starting is $20,565.
Yeah, and that's not the lowest price. They have a base model.
They have a base
18
model.
something.
Yeah,
but I have a feeling like you're probably not going to find that in the stores. It's going to be like the Triple Black or one of the packages.
The trophies.
Yeah.
You know, so those are your most expensive to least expensive for the models that we rode.
Yeah.
So again, substantial. From the Multistrada to the GS 1300, you're looking at almost like $7,000-ish, $8,000 nearly. That's a whole other bike, you know.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. But the Ducati does make up in the price with its phenomenal service interval, at least for the valve clearance check. It is a whopping 37,000 miles between your valve clearance checks, which is like one of the more expensive services you have to do on a motorcycle. And Ducati's already not a cheap bike to service.
No.
So having that like huge gap between any major service is quite a big advantage, because then, like you mentioned earlier, it's spending less time in the shop, assuming that other things don't break. But at least for just regular maintenance, spending less time in the shop, spending more time out riding. And it is a touring adventure bike. And these bikes typically get a lot of miles put on them. So it's very nice to see such a long valve clearance check interval on a bike that's meant to have a lot of miles put on it. And it has a 9,000 mile oil change interval, which is fairly generous. fairly generous as well compared to.
Yeah, and so like you would have to do, again, we're not financial advisors. Everyone's going to have their own price point and reasons for buying a different bike, but you're looking at we'll round down $27,000 for a bike that has a valve check interval of 37,000 miles.
Yeah.
Versus the...
Hell, you might sell the bike before you even have to do the valve clearance check.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And whereas where on the BMW, your valve check interval is 12,000.
12,000. 6,000 for the oil.
For the oil. Yeah. So you're looking at $7,000-ish difference from the most to the least expensive. But you're looking at nearly three times the interval length for your valve checks. So...
And the Triumph is kind of in the middle of the road. 10,000 for oil, 20,000 for valve clearance.
Which is pretty standard for Triumph bikes.
Yeah,
because Triumphs have a very good service interval for all their bikes.
Not mine.
Not yours.
Nope. Not the.
Well, it's still
not the
good.
smaller triples.
No, it's still good because it's comparable to the GS 1300.
Yeah, but I feel like it could be better. I feel like 12,000 miles is not a long interval for an adventure bike.
Yeah,
I feel like 18 would be much more, at least preferable. I feel like that should be the minimum probably for adventure bikes. And then at 6,000 for the oil change doesn't bug me so much because it's easy to change the oil.
Yeah.
But the valve clearance check is not something that I care to do myself. So having to like find the time to fit that in to take it to the dealer every 12,000 miles is like not my favorite thing to look forward to.
Yeah. But basically I just like have to summarize, like for me, my choices is like the Tiger and the Multistrada were really, they're very much in that same feeling, I guess I'd put. Like it's just that while the Tiger is a bunch of fun, plenty of power, very fast, big bike, the Multistrada is just a sugar rush version of it. Yeah. It's like it's nuts.
That's a good way of describing it.
So again, for me, like with that service interval, it's a little bit more comparable, but still better on the Multistrada from the Tiger.
Yeah.
It would just kind of come down to personal preference and your like, so they're both very good, but I really like that Multistrada, man.
For me, I think if I were to rank them, money no object, it would go Multistrada first, BMW, and then Triumph. Unfortunately, last, but just because that Multistrada it's such a rush to ride it. Like it's hard to describe. If you get a chance to demo one of those, go for it.
Because you can buy one. Congratulations.
Yeah, if you can buy one, like wherever you work, are you hiring?
Yeah.
But no, it's just such a rush riding that bike because it's such a big bike, but it has so much power, and it feels like you're still like on a sports bike that not only feels sporty, but also can take you across the country very comfortably.
It's just a roided out sport bike.
It's a roided out sport bike.
Yeah.
Like on tall suspension. And I just absolutely love that V4 engine that they have. It's just phenomenal and so much fun to ride and zip around. And I feel like I'd probably get a speeding ticket on that bike very easily, just how quick it is.
Yeah.
And like it's a bigger bike than like my Tiger 900, but it feels like it has so much more to give despite it being heavier and bigger. Yeah. But it has just so much more power that weight like just disappears on it. Realistically though, if I was buying like something that I could potentially afford, it'd probably be the BMW, just because like the value for money on that BMW and the way of how comfortable it was and how it felt on the road it just felt great. And like justifying spending almost 30 grand on the bike, I don't know if I could ever justify spending that much on a motorcycle, but
in my current lifestyle and everything, like, no, I that was more than my car. Like, and I bought my car new.
And like the BMW is already like, pushing mid 20s if you want to like get it kitted out. Yeah. It's a little easier pill to swallow, probably still more than I could spend on the bike, at least in the
foreseeable future.
In the foreseeable future.
And that's me. And I didn't really, I guess I was just kind of comparing like the ones I had the most fun with. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of realistic, like, affordability to what I can afford and what each bike offered between the Tiger and the GS. I mean, the GS is the more, the Tiger's comfortable. But it is
GS,
like
yeah.
the GS is a smoother, more like
It just feels more refined.
Refined, yeah.
And I feel like
yeah.
because the 1200, like it's not as like it's not as long of a line of models.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't have like quite the same refined feeling that the BMW had.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I put it as like,
At least to me.
yeah, like if you're, I like the Tiger to me was like it's a great, excellent ADV choice for this segment of like ADV touring, but more road oriented.
Yeah.
But it gives you like that more utility, sporty adventure look to it.
Yeah.
Whereas like the GS 1300, I mean, that's a slick looking touring bike.
Very slick looking bike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I actually would have to kind of agree. Like in my realistic segment, like pushing it, like the price point is comparable. The Triumph service intervals are better.
That's the nice part.
And I like the Triumph was a lot of fun, you know? But yeah, if I was going to like, you know what, I'm packing up, this is what I can afford. I'm touring for a living now.
Yeah. It'd probably be the BMW.
It's tough. It's tough.
It's very tough because all three of these bikes are very, very good, pretty damn good. It's just some of them are feel more refined than others. And I think part of it is because they just have the experience of building that kind of bike. And I mean, I'm mainly talking about BMW here, but, or if you just want straight up balls to the wall power, then the Ducati's right there.
Yeah.
I think for Triumph adventure bikes, I think the Tiger 900 is probably like, I like my bike a lot more.
Yeah.
Than the 1200. I just feel
I like your bike more than the 1200 too.
Yeah. I just feel like it's a more well balanced bike for the power, the weight, and the way it feels.
Yeah.
I feel like the 1200 isn't quite there yet on feeling like fully refined. And maybe the next iteration, the next refresh will do that.
Well, and maybe because again, like this current generation of the Tigers, right? That only came out last year.
Yeah.
So it is like a new line of Tiger.
Yeah. And it is a big improvement to the outgoing 1200, but it's still not. It doesn't still quite feel as refined as the GS.
Other than the triple engine, because those things are nice.
Those things are pretty fun.
Yeah. But
anyways, that's about
what we had.
That's our comparison between those three bikes. It would be cool if we had a KTM there to compare it to.
Really?
Because that's a whole like other beast of.
So these are like top of the line, like big boy bikes, big boy adventure bikes for that segment. We're not really, we're not comparing these to your mid to lightweight ADV bikes.
No, we're just comparing these three.
Yeah.
These three and that's it. And then I know I like talked about my Tiger and stuff, but that's just more of like, I feel like because I felt
that's
like
what we have.
Refined bike, but between those three, that's the comparison.
Yeah. And again, we didn't take any off-road features into these. These are the road-oriented.
And we did not do any highway riding. We didn't do any long-distance touring on stuff. So if you have ridden all these three bikes on long-distance tours, or if you own one of these bikes, let us know how it feels to ride it on the highway, ride it for like a week-long or weekend trip. Feel free to let us know.
And then if anything that we said like resonated with you or you disagree with, let us know. Hopefully we helped or in some way or another. So it
was just fun to talk about them and discuss them.
I'd say just thanks for letting us listen to us rant.
And thanks again to Eurosport Utah for letting us take these bikes out for a spin. For sure. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you all have a good night.